Welcome to the ELPA21 Screener Administrator Training module. In this module, we will cover the use and purpose of the ELPA21 Screener, as well as an overview of the changes and updates being implemented for the new school year. By the end of this training, you will know the basic components and formats of the ELPA21 Screener and understand the steps to administering this assessment. You will also know where to find resources that may help you or your team should questions arise. The ELPA21 Screener is an online assessment of students' English language proficiency. It has 3 parts, Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3, and assesses a student's skills and knowledge in the 4 language domains of listening, reading, speaking, and writing. Unlike the summative assessment, the 4 language domains are intermingled in all 3 steps of the screener. A paper-pencil version of the ELPA21 Screener is available as an accommodation for students whose IEP or 504 plan require assessments to be administered without a computer. There is also a version of the screener for students who are blind or vision impaired. Both the paper-pencil and blind low-vision screeners will be housed at OSPI. You will need to notify OSPI when you need one of these screener versions. In Washington, the ELPA21 Screener is the only mechanism for determining eligibility for ELD services. For students who complete only Steps 1 and 2, the test is expected to take between 30 and 45 minutes. For those who also complete Step 3, the test will likely be closer to an hour. The screener has 3 steps. This is consistent with last year. The screener has 3 steps. This is consistent with last year. Step 1 is the portion of the screener that is used to introduce students to the item types and provide the TA with an opportunity to evaluate the student's ability to navigate the test items and use technology. This portion of the test is not scored. Step 1 is always administered 1-to-1. Step 1 includes items from all domains and ends with speaking items. Following Step 1, the TA will make a decision regarding how the test will be administered once the scored portion of the assessment begins. This decision will require the TA to decide if the student will continue with 1-to-1 test administration or if the student has the technological skill to navigate the test independently. Step 2 is the start of the scored portion of the testing experience. It will be broken into 2 sections. The first section consists of 4 speaking items and is administered 1-to-1, and the second section, which includes the other 3 language domains, can be administered 1-to-1 or independently depending on the student's ability to use technology and navigate the test. Step 2 is where the on-the-fly scoring items are presented. All students take Step 2. Step 3. Students who are not on trajectory to score proficient will be exited from the test after Step 2. For those who are on a path to potentially score proficient, their testing sessions will continue to Step 3. Step 3 includes items from all domains and includes constructed response items that are scored by our test vendor. Step 3 in the screener will only be available if the student is on trajectory to possibly score proficient, based on scores from items in Step 2. This decision is made by the test engine based on the student's performance. It cannot be overturned by the TA. Scoring on the ELPA21 Screener will include on-the-fly scoring done by the TA at the beginning of Step 2. These 4 speaking questions will be scored on the fly by the TA on the student's computer once the student has finished all 4 items. These speaking questions are scored on a 0, 1, 2 rubric. The remainder of Step 2 is scored by the computer. Step 3 includes constructed response items that are centrally scored by the vendor, as well as computer-scored items. At the end of Step 1, the TA decides if the student has the technological skill to navigate the test independently. Following the speaking items at the beginning of Step 2 is when this decision is implemented. The student will either proceed through the remainder of the test with the 1-to-1 administration or independently depending on the TA's answers to questions at the end of Step 1. It is important that TAs complete the Step 1 portion of the screener and the first 4 speaking items in Step 2 in a one-to-one test environment to avoid students answering the TA questions and scoring themselves on speaking. There is no built-in mechanism to stop the test so the TA can return to the student at the end of Step 1. The one-to-one test requirement is the assurance against students scoring themselves. The turnaround time for students whose tests end with Step 2 will be almost immediate. All of these students will qualify for ELD services, and their scores should be available within a couple of hours in the ORS system. For students who enter Step 3, our turnaround time is not changing. These students' scores will be available in ORS within 7 days. Current Washington law requires that all students who potentially qualify for English Language Development Service be identified and begin receiving services within 10 days of enrollment. This policy is not currently under consideration for change. Districts can expect the 10-day window to remain consistent for the coming school year. It will still likely be necessary to leverage the temporary ID system for screener testing. In order to access the screener, students must have some kind of identification number in the TIDE system. However, it is not necessary to connect this temporary ID to the eventual permanent SSID of the student. The information from the screener must be entered into CEDARS, but it does not need to be linked to the permanent student record in TIDE. For more information on adding records in TIDE or creating temporary SSIDs, please view the module on temporary SSIDs in the WCAP portal on the OSPI website. Another good source of information is the ELPA21 updates. These communications can be found on the ELP assessment page on the OSPI website, and you can sign up for these updates using the Sign Up for ELPA21 link on the same page. The ELPA21 screener allows for supports and accommodations during the testing session. If a student arrives in district with an IEP or 504 plan, the district will need to set the IEP accommodations in TIDE prior to the onset of testing. There are times when a student with disabilities arrives at a district without an IEP or 504 plan. In this case, the district staff should work with parents to identify appropriate accommodations for testing. In such a case, students should arrive in district with documented disabilities. They may not have an IEP, but they should have documentation. Please ensure the IEP teams, once they are formed, are aware of the accommodations provided during the screener testing. The TIDE system has not changed for the new school year, and setting accommodations will follow the same process as in previous years. For students whose disabilities may preclude them from participating in a specific language domain, domain exemptions are an option. Please review the All About Domain Exemptions guidance for more information. If a student does qualify for domain exemption, the exemption will need to be coded in TIDE prior to the onset of testing. In preparing to administer the screener, districts should ensure that all computers are equipped with the current secure browser and that all headsets used for testing function with the practice and training test. The secure test environment should include a space for the TA and student to sit side by side during testing. During the test, TAs will need to score 4 speaking items. Please prepare a small enrichment activity for students to keep their motivation from being impacted by the scoring. Enrichment activities may include a small puzzle, coloring page, Rubik's Cube, or other 3D puzzle, or a Sudoku type game. Anything really that a student could do for 3 minutes and then return to testing. As TAs become more familiar with the scoring rubric, an enrichment activity may become less necessary. The TA will also need to prepare a clipboard, writing utensil, and on-the-fly scoring rubric to have handy for scoring. Please also ensure that all electronic devices are stored away from the testing space. The screener is administered through the Test Delivery System, or TDS. To start a testing session, access TDS through the WCAP portal by clicking on the Test Administrators tile and then choosing Test Administration. Please note, if you have not logged into the AIR system since last school year, you will need to reset your account before you can proceed to any AIR systems, including TIDE, ORS, and TDS. There are 2 options for the test session you create for the screener in the Test Delivery System. The first is an option that allows multiple grade level tests to be active in the same test session. If you have multiple TAs administering at the same time, for example at an August testing event, you may want to choose this one. However, if you are testing students from a single grade band, it may be more efficient to click on the plus sign and only open the appropriate grade band test. As with the annual ELPA21 assessment, the test session will expire after 20 minutes if no one has logged in. Step 1. This portion of the assessment is for the student to become familiar with the item types and the technology used. During this portion of the assessment, you may talk freely with the student and help the student feel comfortable with the testing experience, but please follow the TA script to ensure that the student is exposed to and aware of the tools available to them during testing. If you go off script to answer a student's question, please make sure you return to the script in order to cover all the tools available to the student. Step 1 is not scored. Following this section, the TA uses the Step 1 experience to decide if the student will continue with one-to-one administration or independently navigate the test. At the end of Step 1, the TA must decide whether the student will continue with the one-to-one test administration. This decision should be made based on the student's ability to navigate the test independently. It is a decision based on demonstrated comfort with technology, not language proficiency. The decision that is made at the end of Step 1 is consistent for Steps 2 and 3. At the end of Step 1, the TA will choose a response that best describes the student's participation in Step 1. The response options include A. Student engaged with at least one practice question in Step 1. B. Student engaged with at least one practice question, but in a language other than English. C. Student engaged with at least one practice question, but only non-verbally. Or D. Student did not engage with any practice questions in Step 1. At this point, the TA chooses the appropriate option to describe the student's participation. This is what the screen will look like at the end of Step 1. The TA must answer both of these questions at this point. For the first question, respond as appropriate depending on the student's participation. For the second question, the TA must choose either A or B if the response to the first question was A, B, or C. If the TA selected option D for the first question, the only response to question 2 is C. Step 2 is where the scored portion of the test begins. This portion of the test contains a separate speaking-only section at the beginning. The speaking items presented in this section are the ones the TA scores. Through these 4 speaking items, the test must be administered one-to-one. The other 3 language domains are presented through the remainder of Step 2. All students take Step 2. Many students' tests will end after Step 2. Whether a student continues to Step 3 is a computer-generated determination. Step 3. This portion of the assessment is only for students whose responses in Step 2 put them on a trajectory to be proficient. Step 3 includes 4 language domains and is scored centrally by a vendor. Scores for these students will include hand-scored items, and score reports will take up to 7 days to appear in ORS. Please note, while the majority of students will follow this path of Step 2 scores leading to Step 3, students who have 1 or more domain exemptions will take both Step 2 and 3. This is because the individual domain items are rather few for each domain, and the scoring algorithm integrates items across domains. So to ensure a valid representation of a student's knowledge, those with domain exemptions take both Step 2 and 3 of the screener. Step 2 of the ELPA21 screener consists of 4 speaking items that will be scored by the TA. The test will open to the first operational task in Step 2, a speaking task of 4 items. The student will respond to the items as presented. The student can re-record a response and review the recordings before finalizing them. A student cannot record, listen, and then extend a response. Clicking on the microphone button a second time will erase the original recording. The TA can help troubleshoot technology if there are issues with volume or clarity of recording. The TA's primary task at this point is to score the speaking items. Many TAs may wish to take notes on the responses. The notes sheet at the end of the rubric is available for this purpose. When the student is satisfied with their responses, A screen will appear asking the student to pass the computer to the TA. Then the TA will get a screen on the student's computer in which scores for each of the 4 responses will be input. The TA can still click the back button to review the recordings. It is important that the TA listen to the recordings, as that is what the scores must be based on. Scoring at this point in the test is required. A TA cannot wait until the end of the test and come back to score this section. Once the TA submits the scores are final and cannot be changed. After the scores are submitted, the TA will get a screen indicating that it is time to return the computer to the student. Clicking Next on this screen will open the next item in Step 2 for the student. The audio will automatically play, so the headphones should be given back to the student before clicking Next. The rubric for the on-the-fly scoring is the same 0, 1, 2 rubric in all grades. Responses at the 2 level are typically characterized by A. The student uses appropriate vocabulary that is relevant to the stimulus and effectively uses grammar and structures. Though the response may contain a few errors in usage, the student's meaning is clear. And B. The student effectively answers the prompt and the response is consistent with the stimulus. A response must meet all criteria to score at the 2-point level. Responses at the 1-point level are typically characterized by A. The response may include words and phrases related to the stimulus, but frequent errors in grammar and vocabulary may significantly interfere with listener comprehension. And B. The response partially addresses the prompt, though some content may be inaccurate or otherwise unconnected to the stimulus. A response must meet all criteria to score at this point level. It is important to remember that both the prompt and the visual are considered the stimulus for the speaking items in Step 2. Responses at the 0-point level do not address the communicative demands of the task. Responses at the 0 level typically include refusals to respond, responses that are only in a language other than English, a response of yes, no, or I don't know, responses that are off-task or off-topic, and those that are unintelligible. Let's try scoring some sample responses. The prompt for this question is, what are the boy and the teacher doing at the table? Look at the 8 responses provided for this prompt and determine how many points you would score each response. Remember, a 2-point response may have grammatical errors but answers the prompt correctly and is clearly connected to the stimulus, while a 1-point response may only partially address the prompt, is related to the stimulus, and may have significant errors that impact meaning. Please pause the recording while you score these. The scores for each response are shown to the right. The answer, "they make a pattern," is an appropriate and accurate response to the prompt and meets all criteria at the 2-point level. Omocha to asobu is a Japanese phrase that describes the actions of the girls on the carpet. The rubric states specifically that responses in a language other than English receive 0 points. Draw is a response that is related to the visual stimulus, but not the specific question being asked. The student who is drawing or painting is not at the table. This response meets the criteria of Level 1, but not Level 2. The rubric states that the response may include words and phrases related to the stimulus. While the student described a different student's actions, the response was related to the stimulus and partially answered the prompt. They sit is an appropriate and accurate response to the prompt and meets all criteria at the 2-point level, even if they are sitting would be more grammatically accurate. Build, blocks, and sitting are all appropriate and accurate responses to the prompt and meet all criteria at the 2-point level. Play on the floor is another response that is clearly related to the stimulus, but misses the mark on the prompt. The response is inaccurate as it has mistaken the subject, but is clearly related to the stimulus and meets the criteria for Level 1. Another Level 2 response may be math. Let's try another example. The prompt for this item is, where are the girls? Look at the 8 responses provided for this prompt and determine how many points you would score each response. Remember that we are trying to engage students in a speaking task. If they interpret the woman at the table as one of the girls, that is okay. The focus is on their speaking. Please pause the recording while you score these responses. The responses to numbers 1, 5, 6, and 8 are all appropriate and accurate responses to the prompt and meet all criteria at the 2-point level. Response number 2, close, is unclear without a word or phrase to accompany it. This response may be enough to score 1 point, as the girls in the visual are close together or close to the student who is painting, but it does not fully address the prompt at a level 2. Building blocks is a response that is clearly related to the visual stimulus, but not to the specific question being asked. It does not address the where of the question, but does speak specifically to the portion of the visual that this prompt is centered on. Sitting is a response that follows the same logic as building blocks, in that it addresses the visual and even the subject of the prompt, but not where. Play on the floor, response number 8, is an appropriate and accurate response to the prompt and meets all criteria at the 2-point level. This response differs from other responses at the 1-point level that are related to the activities of the girls by providing a location. Please note, it is important to allow the student's interpretation of the image. If the student identifies the child painting as a girl or a boy, that is okay. We are focusing on the student's English speaking skills. For this third example, the prompt states, "What is on the wall?" Please pause the recording as you score these responses. In these examples, number 3, no, and number 5, alone, are both responses at the 0-point level. No is specifically called out in the rubric at the 0-point level, and alone is not related to the prompt or the visual for this item. The responses for numbers 1, 2, 4, and 6 are all appropriate and accurate responses to the prompt and meet all criteria at the 2-point level. Purple and yellow is a response that describes one of the pictures on the wall and thus partially addresses the prompt, but it does not meet all the criteria for 2 points. Shapes is a response similar to purple and yellow and would be insufficient for 2 points, but is related to the prompt and can receive 1. This is the final practice round. Try these 8 responses to the prompt. It's almost time for recess. What do you think will happen next? Remember that the word next should be interpreted loosely and can refer to any future time that day. Please pause the recording as you score these responses. With the exception of beautiful day, all of these responses would be scored 2 points. The response beautiful day may be related to the visual, but it is not an accurate response to the prompt and does not meet the criteria for a 2-point response. ELPA21 and OSPI have developed resources to help you with the scoring. These resources are located on the ELPA21 page of the OSPI website and also on the WCAP portal. The Test Administrator Manual will be available on the WCAP portal and includes a TA script for Step 1 to help ensure that all the testing tools available to students are covered. The ELPA21 screener can be paused. When a test is paused and returned to at a later time, students can still access any item in the section of the test they returned to. Please note, a screener is not automatically submitted. It must be ended either automatically at the end of Step 2 or by clicking End Test at the end of Step 3 in order for a score report to be generated. Please ensure that students' tests have been submitted if you are not finding scores in the online reporting system. A new policy was decided in July 2018 to accept ELPA21 scores from out of state. Washington does not accept any other tests for placement purposes, but ELPA21 scores from other states can be used to determine a student's placement in Washington schools. To use out-of-state scores, the score report must be available as evidence of the student's scores. The scores must also be from within the previous 12 months if the student is placed in services. Screener or annual ELPA21 scores can be used to inform placement, but annual scores would typically be the priority. There are a number of vendor-developed modules that will help new TAs gain knowledge of the assessment system. These modules are available through the WCAP portal and can be accessed from the OSPI testing page. Upon completing this module, please continue to the site below to complete the short knowledge check. Additional information and links to the Moodle site will be provided on the screener page on the OSPI website. If you have any questions, please contact Leslie Huff in the Office of Select Assessments. This concludes the training module for the ELPA21 Screener. Thank you for your time and attention.